Sometimes silence is more powerful than words. Sometimes stepping back creates more attraction than chasing ever could. This is not about manipulation. This is about self-respect, emotional control, and understanding female psychology. If you've ever wondered what really happens when you stop forcing connection, this message will change how you see relationships forever. When emotional presence suddenly turns into emotional absence, the mind doesn't relax, it activates. What once felt normal now feels missing, and that gap creates curiosity. Female psychology is deeply connected to emotional patterns, not constant availability. When attention is predictable, it becomes background noise. But when it disappears, the brain starts replaying memories, moments, conversations, and feelings. The silence becomes louder than words ever were. Emotional absence doesn't mean coldness or disrespect. It means stepping back without drama, without explanation, without trying to control the outcome. This shift interrupts expectations. The mind naturally wants to restore balance, and when something valuable is removed, its value increases. Suddenly, small things are remembered: the way you listened, the way you stayed calm, the way you didn't beg or force connection. Absence turns ordinary moments into emotional highlights. The key here is contrast. When someone is always present, there is nothing to compare that presence to. But when they leave space, the contrast sharpens awareness. The mind begins to ask questions. Why is he quiet? What changed? Did I misjudge his importance? These questions create emotional engagement far stronger than reassurance ever could. Curiosity becomes attachment's silent partner. Emotional absence also shifts power. When you stop filling every silence, the other person is forced to sit with their own thoughts. Reflection begins. Feelings that were once ignored resurface because there is no distraction. This is when emotional realization happens, not through conversations, but through internal dialogue. The heart starts speaking when the noise stops. Most importantly, emotional absence signals self-respect. It shows that your world does not collapse around one person. That stability feels safe, mature, and attractive. It communicates strength without saying a word. And strength invites curiosity far more than availability ever will. This is why emotional absence works, not because it manipulates, but because it restores balance. It allows emotions to breathe, memories to grow louder, and attraction to rebuild naturally. When presence is earned again, it feels meaningful. And that is when the dynamic changes quietly, deeply, and powerfully. Expand the 2 key point on the 400 words without heading. Attention can be given by anyone, at any time, without effort or value. But self-respect is rare, and the human mind is naturally drawn to what is rare. Female psychology responds more strongly to how someone values themselves than to how much attention they offer. When attention is excessive, it silently communicates insecurity, a message that says, that need slowly erodes attraction. Even if it feels good at first, self-respect changes that dynamic completely. It shows emotional independence. It shows that your happiness, identity, and confidence are not dependent on approval or validation. This creates a sense of emotional safety and strength. Someone who respects themselves does not chase reactions, does not over-explain, and does not tolerate behavior that crosses their boundaries. That calm firmness is deeply attractive because it signals stability. When attention is reduced and self-respect is maintained, the energy shifts. Instead of trying to impress, you become grounded. Instead of seeking reassurance, you give space. That space forces the other person to notice the difference. Suddenly, they feel the absence of your effort. Not because you withdrew emotionally, but because you stopped overgiving. This absence highlights your value. Self-respect also controls emotional reactions. You don't rush to respond. You don't argue to be understood. You don't beg to be chosen. This restraint creates mystery and authority. It tells the subconscious mind that you know your worth and are willing to walk away from anything that compromises it. That willingness is powerful. The mind naturally respects what cannot be easily controlled. When someone realizes they cannot manipulate your emotions or gain unlimited access to your attention, they reassess your importance. Respect grows first. Without respect, attention feels cheap. With respect, even silence feels meaningful. This is why self-respect always wins over attention. Attention tries to pull someone closer. Self-respect allows them to come willingly. One creates pressure, the other creates desire, and desire lasts longer. When you choose self-respect, you stop performing for approval. You become consistent, calm, and centered. That energy speaks louder than compliments or constant messages ever could. And in that quiet confidence, attraction rebuilds naturally, not because you tried harder, but because you finally valued yourself more. Chasing feels like effort, and effort feels sincere, but psychologically it creates the opposite effect of what is intended. When someone is constantly available, constantly reaching out, constantly trying to fix or prove something, the mind stops feeling excitement. There is no uncertainty, no anticipation, no space for imagination. Everything is already given. Female psychology responds more to emotional depth and mystery than to visible effort. When there is nothing left to wonder about, attraction slowly fades. Mystery is not about hiding or playing games. It's about allowing space for the mind to engage. When you chase, you remove that space. You answer every question before it's even asked. You explain feelings before curiosity has time to form. You show all your cards too early. This turns connection into routine, and routine dulls emotional intensity. Chasing also places you in a lower emotional position. It subtly communicates that the other person is the center of your world while you are waiting on the sidelines for validation. That imbalance shifts power. When one person is always pursuing, the other unconsciously relaxes their effort. Value is no longer mutual. What comes easily is rarely protected. When chasing stops, something interesting happens. Silence appears, gaps form. And in those gaps, the mind starts filling in the blanks. Thoughts return, memories replay, questions rise. The emotional brain becomes active again. Mystery brings focus back to what was taken for granted. Another important aspect is emotional leadership. Someone who does not chase shows control over their impulses. They don't react emotionally to every trigger. They don't try to force outcomes. That restraint feels mature and grounded. It signals confidence, not loud confidence, but quiet certainty. And quiet certainty is magnetic. Chasing tries to convince, mystery invites discovery. One pushes, the other pulls naturally. When you step back, you allow attraction to grow on its own terms. You stop interfering with the emotional process. This is when interest rebuilds, not because of words or actions, but because of absence and contrast. Ultimately, chasing kills mystery because it leaves nothing to explore. When you remove the chase, you restore balance. You allow emotions to surface organically. You allow curiosity to replace certainty. And curiosity is the doorway through which attraction re-enters, slowly, deeply, and without force. Silence is often misunderstood as weakness, avoidance, or emotional distance. But psychologically, it does something far more powerful. When words stop, the mind begins to speak. Female psychology is highly responsive to internal emotional processing, and silence removes external distractions. Without constant messages, explanations, the mind is forced to turn inward. This is where reflection begins. When someone is always talking, always reacting, always clarifying, there is no room for thought. Emotions stay on the surface, but when silence enters, emotions sink deeper. The absence of communication creates a pause, and that pause encourages self-questioning. Thought changed? Or why is this different? Naturally arise. These questions activate emotional memory. Silence also removes control. Words can persuade, comfort, or influence, but silence cannot be controlled or predicted. This uncertainty unsettles the mind in a subtle way. It creates emotional tension, not anxiety, but awareness. The mind starts revisiting past interactions, replaying moments, reassessing behavior, and recognizing emotional patterns that were previously ignored. Another important effect of silence is emotional responsibility. When there is no one talking, explaining, or initiating, the emotional weight shifts inward. The person must confront their own feelings without guidance. This is often when realization happens. Feelings that were minimized or suppressed rise to the surface because there is no external noise to suppress them. Silence also communicates strength. It shows emotional discipline. It signals that you do not need to fill space to feel secure. That calm restraint is deeply impactful. It contrasts sharply with emotional overreaction, which often pushes reflection away. The quieter you become, the louder your presence feels. Over time, silence becomes a mirror. It reflects emotions back to the person experiencing them. Without interruption, the mind begins connecting dots, actions, consequences, absence, and value. This reflection is far more effective than confrontation. It allows emotions to mature naturally. This is why silence is powerful. Not because it punishes, but because it allows truth to surface. It gives space for emotional clarity, memory, and understanding. When reflection replaces reaction, feelings deepen, and in that depth, awareness grows quietly, honestly, and without resistance. Emotional strength is one of the most attractive qualities a person can possess, and it plays a crucial role in how female psychology responds in relationships. Women are naturally drawn to stability and consistency, not chaos or overdependence. Emotional strength is not about suppressing feelings or being distant. It's about maintaining balance, controlling impulses, and demonstrating resilience in the face of challenges. When someone exhibits this quality, it signals reliability, maturity, and inner security, all of which are deeply appealing. A person with emotional strength does not react impulsively to every situation or conflict. They understand that emotions are powerful, but they do not allow them to dictate actions recklessly. This ability to stay calm and composed under pressure communicates confidence and self-control. It also creates an environment where others feel safe to express themselves because they know their emotions will not trigger unpredictable responses. Emotional stability fosters trust, respect, and admiration naturally. Women are particularly sensitive to how emotions are managed because emotional intelligence reflects a person's character. When someone demonstrates emotional strength, it shows that they are capable of handling not only their own feelings, but also the dynamics of a relationship in a healthy way. This quality differentiates between someone who is reactive and someone who is proactive, someone who chases validation versus someone who maintains self-worth. Moreover, emotional strength is closely tied to patience and restraint. A person who does not constantly seek attention or reassurance allows the other person to reflect, feel, and even miss them. This self-discipline creates a magnetic pull because it transforms presence into value. When feelings are earned rather than forced, the connection deepens. Emotional strength also allows boundaries to be set without guilt, demonstrating that respect for oneself and others is non-negotiable. Finally, emotional strength shifts the dynamic of attraction. It positions someone as a source of stability rather than unpredictability. It signals that they are confident enough to let the other person come forward in their own time without manipulation or pressure. Strength creates space for admiration, reflection, and desire to grow naturally. When emotions are strong but measured, attraction is no longer about chasing. It's about mutual recognition of value. In essence, emotional strength is about being centered, composed, and self-assured. It quietly commands attention and fosters respect. It encourages reflection, builds trust, and allows relationships to develop organically. This inner power is far more compelling than superficial gestures or constant pursuit because it resonates on a deeper psychological level, one that naturally draws admiration, emotional engagement, and long-term connection. Detachment is a powerful psychological tool that often gets misunderstood. It is not about coldness, indifference, or a lack of care. Rather, it is about maintaining emotional independence while staying grounded. When someone practices detachment, they stop over-investing in reactions, outcomes, or validation from others. This subtle shift in behavior creates a natural reversal of emotional dynamics because the other person can no longer take your attention or energy for granted. Detachment, in essence, restores balance and invites genuine curiosity. When attention is no longer guaranteed, the mind starts to notice patterns that were previously overlooked. Small gestures, shared moments, and even quiet presence gain significance because they're no longer accompanied by constant availability. The absence of pursuit triggers reflection. People naturally start to reassess their feelings and behaviors when they sense that they cannot control the flow of attention. This shift allows emotions to resurface organically rather than being forced. Detachment also communicates strength without words. It demonstrates that your self-worth is not dependent on approval or immediate responses. This quiet confidence signals that your life, happiness, and emotional state are under your own control. Such strength is deeply attractive because it contrasts with neediness or dependency. When someone is detached yet consistent in their behavior, it signals stability and reliability, creating a magnetic presence. Importantly, detachment forces emotional responsibility onto the other person. When someone realizes that their actions are no longer dictating your mood or attention, they begin to reflect on their own behavior. They must confront their feelings and evaluate what they truly want. This internal reflection often leads to a stronger emotional pull because the connection is no longer one-sided. Detachment encourages mutual effort rather than constant pursuit. Another effect of detachment is the restoration of mystery. When availability is predictable, interest can wane. But by holding space and not over-explaining or over-communicating, the mind starts to engage more deeply. Questions emerge, memories become sharper, curiosity replaces familiarity, and that curiosity can evolve into renewed attraction. Ultimately, detachment does not push people away, it invites them to step forward on their own terms. It reverses the typical dynamics of control in relationships by allowing emotional energy to flow naturally. When combined with self-respect, emotional strength, and calm confidence, detachment creates an environment where attraction, reflection, and desire emerge without force. It is a subtle, quiet strategy that shifts power, restores balance, and encourages deeper, more meaningful emotional connections.